So maybe you could introduce yourself and tell us what was your path, how you came up to where you are now.
My name is Stormy May, and I have just loved horses since birth. Horse crazy kid, horse crazy in school. When I was 10, I was able to get my first horse, and at that point I did whatever anybody taught me. I did English, Western, dressage, jumping, eventing, trail riding, camping with horses, all of that. And very quickly I became a professional trainer. By the time I was 13, I was starting young horses and, starting them under saddle. I had a very successful career. I was a well-known pony club instructor here in the United States, training kids and their horses to compete together. I became a horse management judge. I became a national examiner with the pony club. And I traveled around the country judging and showing and teaching at camps, all sorts of stuff. At the same time, I had my own ranch and I had horses in training, and I had a couple of horses that really were not okay with what I was asking them to do, be riding horses.
How does that look like, not okay?
Not okay. So with one of them was a Dutch warm blood mare, a big dressage type horse. And I wanted to go to the Olympics with her. And we could never get past the beginning. I could tack her up, she loved me, on the ground, she loved me, but then I'd get on and start trying to ride her and she would just shut down. She would just stop. She wouldn't go. And it felt horrible to be kicking her and pushing her and, running her around, trying to do all these things to force her to go when she was just clearly saying, I don't want to do this. And then so for 11 years, I tried to figure out how to connect with her under saddle. And then the last straw, as we say, was I was sent a large pony mare. She was 3 years old. I was sent her to start under saddle and sell her as a kid's pony. And she was just very outspoken about not wanting to be ridden. Anytime I would tie her up, start to put the saddle on, she would get very aggressive and just telling me, no, 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 no. And this was in about 2006. And it just felt wrong. The only thing that I knew was get stronger or do the natural horsemanship stuff, which is still escalate the pressure, get stronger, force them. And then the idea is then they'll understand that if they don't do it, they're going to get hurt. And it just, there had to be something different.
So it was a discipline that you are stronger than a horse and you're forcing them to do things. You are getting stronger to force your horse to do that.
Exactly. Yep. And that's, it was one thing if it was a big horse that I was doing that with, which even that was horrible. But then when it was a pony and she was just getting more strong herself in fighting. And that's when I just kept looking around for different ways that other people did it that felt better. And that I made a short list of 6 people around the world that looked like they really had a different way of doing it. And I was ready to be done. I was ready to not continue in that way. I would never have found it if I'd had horses that got along with the program, that just did what I asked. But because of these 2 particular mares, I was forced to do something different because my only other option was send them to somebody else who would get stronger with them. So I was looking for the magical way. I was looking for the way that we could be true partners. And at that point, the bridleless riding was getting very popular, and I was like, wow, how can people do this? And most of it, I found out, was it's just the same. It's you condition the horse with the bridle or the halter, and then once they understand that they have to do what you say, then you take it off, and it looks like this magical thing happening, but it's not. It's just conditioning. It's classical conditioning, operant conditioning. So I sold my ranch so that I could have money to go on this trip and find a new way to be with horses. And I made a documentary about it called The Path of the Horse. And that is where we are now. That's really the turning point of how I found that there is something different. There is another way to connect and be partners together.
So how many years ago have you sold your ranch?
I sold that in 2006, and then I spent most of 2006 doing the filming and traveling, and then I edited the movie for 2 years. I did all the editing myself, so it was released in 2008, and luckily I found the answer. Luckily I did find a way to have that partnership that was truly a partnership where you don't need even a halter to connect with a horse. It's two-way communication. I still have actually the pony that I was sent. I ended up buying her for myself. She was a client's, but I bought her for myself because she was so loud, so loud in expressing what she liked and didn't like. And I knew that if I sent her back into the horse world, that she would be one of those horrible riding ponies that nobody wants to get. So I still have her. She is 17 now. She'll be 18 this year. And she's amazing. We don't ride. She's very clear that she doesn't want to be ridden, and that's okay, because there's so much more that I've learned from her about peace and harmony and autonomy and sovereignty and respect. That's all I do with them now, is listen to them and learn from them. Because if you think about it, they've been here on this earth longer than even humans have been. And they have this wild wisdom that allows them to live in harmony. So, I think they really hold the key when you start seeing them as teachers and partners. If they want to be partners, then you can access this wisdom that they have, that they've had it all along. It's us that have closed ourselves off, thinking that we need to teach them, we need to train them, we need to tell them how to be, we need to tell them when they're being naughty. But it's not true. They know very well how to be. They know very well what they would like to do. And when we can really understand that to love is to honor, to respect, to listen, then that's where that partnership starts.
I see. And you said you were planning to go to Olympics with horseback riding. Were you training Olympic athletes, or were you going yourself?
For myself, yeah, in dressage. That was my favorite sport. I did mostly I did 3-day eventing and dressage. And as I was getting older, I was realizing that dressage is a safer sport than eventing. But it still had that challenge and that lure of dancing with the horses, until I really realized what was happening. It's not dancing with horses, it's manipulating and controlling. And it wasn't, a lot of people say, oh, my horse loves to do it. So I say, well, take off all the tack, take off the bridle, take off the halter, and see if your horse still loves to do it. Do they come to you? Do they stand while you put on a saddle? Do they do all these things, not because you've conditioned them, but because they truly want to do it with you on their back? And that's, it's an exploration people can go on, but it's, and I did. In The Path of the Horse, the documentary, there's a horse that you see me with at the end of that. And we got to a place where I had stopped riding him for about 2 years as I was making the documentary and trying to form this different partnership. And we got to a place where we could, in friendship, I could walk out to the middle of the pasture with nothing on. He would walk up to a rock that I was standing on, and I could get on, and I'd get on him for just a couple minutes, and it would be amazing. And then I would jump off, and that was that. It was part of playing together, part of having this beautiful relationship together. It's not like I would say, oh, come on, you can come ride my horse, because it was this whole relationship that we had developed.
I see. And so do you still ride horses?
Oh no, not at all. Um, I, I kept getting on and experimenting with that sort of relationship until about 2009. And then actually what really changed, I should talk about Alexander Nazarov. He's in Russia, in St. Petersburg, and he was one of the people I interviewed. And at that point, he was still riding. I went and saw him twice in 2006. But he was doing it all with no bridle, no halter, nothing on the horse's head. And it was still a form of training at that point. It was positive reinforcement, basically. So instead of punishing the horse for doing something you don't want, you would reward the horse for doing something you do want. But what happened after that, I gave him a copy of a book called The Beautiful Jim Key. And it was about this horse who had been taught to recognize letters and spell out words. So Alexander started teaching his horses to do that. And what he found from that, what the horses were able to tell him once they knew how to communicate this way, is that they didn't want to be doing that. So that's when he stopped riding. And that's when it all made sense. It all made sense. Like, as if riding is no longer our end goal, if the relationship and that partnership, that respect is the end goal, is the learning. Riding is, some people still say their horses love to be ridden, but I find that hard to believe. None of the horses that I've met and worked with were saying, come, get on my back, let's go. You know, sure, they'd like to go, but they'd like to go where they'd like to go, not where you are forcing them to go. So yes, so in 2009, I mean, I feel like I could have kept riding in that way, but part of what ended it for me also was the amount of time it takes to get that kind of relationship with a horse. It's, you know, hours every day. And I'd already spent so much of my life with horses that I was okay being done with it. You know, I think if somebody wants to explore that for themselves with the horse free in the pasture, I don't have a problem with that. But if they're doing it out of their own need rather than respecting what the horse wants, I think it can get off course there. So for me, I was just done. I didn't need to prove anything. I could have kept doing it over and over again with different horses, but that's not really where the magic is. The magic is meeting them face to face, eye to eye, and having a conversation with them where you're not putting your life on top of them. You're not depending on them to not do something that would make you fall off.
I see. And you grew up probably with horseback riders, with a community. So has your relationship changed with the people? Have you left the community? Have you had like discussions, maybe even debates?
Yeah, I mean, that used to be everywhere I would travel, it would be to be with other horse riders here, there, everywhere. And I did really step away from it, especially at the beginning when, you know, we're just doing different things. Yes, we love horses, but it's in a whole different context. In the beginning, also, I would say I was advocating more for people to wake up and understand what horseback riding really entails. But what I found was that first somebody has to really like you, trust you, appreciate your opinion. And if you start out saying that, oh, you shouldn't be riding horses, that's the end of it right there, you know. So sure, I mean, I teach online now, and I would say maybe 10–20% of the people that I teach are still riding and are okay with riding. So it's about teaching them how to have a better relationship with wherever they're at with their horses right now. And it's very much non-judgmental, you know, like I for years wouldn't have understood where I am right now. So feeling that compassion for them, that they're on their own path. And, you know, if they're going to say, oh, my horse loves riding, maybe they're right. I don't know. I haven't met their horse. My horses didn't, but it's really about not being confrontational, being somebody's friend, being somebody's advocate, just like you would be with a horse. You know, I don't need to tell anybody they're wrong. If usually the longer somebody's with horses, the more they realize, oh yeah, this actually doesn't feel like what I imagined. And that's when people usually come to me. They're like, you know, I tried natural horsemanship, but they wanted me to get stronger and punish the horse, and it didn't feel right. And that's when people find me, and I definitely can help them develop and deepen their relationship, open their communication. The other thing that's worth mentioning is that when you have a non-ridden relationship with a horse, they open up more levels of communication with the human, because that expectation that they be obedient and that they always do what you say isn't there. So they are more able to express themselves in their more natural, authentic ways, rather than, you know, just be quiet and do what you're told. It really is. I didn't realize, most people don't realize that the animals that we think of as horses, you know, you go to a riding stable and you meet these horses and you think, oh, that's what a horse is like. But it's not. That's not what a natural horse is like. A natural horse has so much more open and subtle communication that is just a joy to be in the presence of, especially when you let go of your human thoughts of, you know, they have to be like this or they have to be like that. So for me, meeting Alexander Nezarov's horses really opened my eyes to that. It's like, wow, these horses are very empowered. They're very much wanting to have a conversation with me. Whereas usually the horses I knew before that were just, you know, even my own, they were just shut down, but I didn't even realize they were shut down because it was so normal, so typical. So
That's very interesting, because in our filming of the woman that has a sanctuary, she sits on the field, really low on the ground, and these different horses are just approaching her and like interrupting the filming almost as puppies, and like they want attention, they want to be in front of the camera, and they act totally different than horses that we filmed in the horseback riding school. Like they are very like young, you would say.
yes, that's exactly it. Yep, you've noticed it.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I have like very small experience of like spending time not riding horses, but like just reading book in the field and how they react. Like with this one pony, and she was really amazing, and she would just like come by, sit by me, like, and kind of hang around while I read book when I was a kid, because she was just like spending summer in my aunt's summer house. There was a pony and nobody was riding that pony, so I kind of understand this. And when I grew up, I thought like, I really want to have a horse, but I don't want to learn how to ride it. Like, do I have to ride horses? Like, it's so stressful. Like, and many times when I would go to horseback riding, I would be forced to get on the horse, and other girls who are riders would force horses to go faster than I would feel comfortable. Like that one where the horse is running and jumping, like without preparation really, and they would think it's really cool. And I was like always thinking like, I know it's like adrenaline for everybody, but for me it's like, it's not cool. Like I feel like forced, like, Yeah, kind of. It's abusive for everybody. Like if you're running after somebody who's very fast and very brave, and you're just following with your horse, and like I felt like this is like I want a slower relationship, and I feel like maybe I am a coward and these things don't exist. And now I met like you and like other people who are like, are there more people like you who have this concept around the world, like alternative relationships with horses?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think they all find me because they usually see the Path of the Horse documentary. And so I've become like this hub for people that are like, hey, this doesn't feel right. What else can we do here? How else can we have a relationship? So yeah, there's hundreds, thousands of people that do feel this way. And I love to find a space for us to come together and to understand each other, and to, it's almost like rather than making other people that do other things with horses wrong, it's just another alternative. Here's a different way to be with horses that is right for a lot of us, that is certainly right for the horses. If the horses had a choice of which way to be with humans, I'm sure they would choose this way. But yeah, going back to what you said about being pushed into something, maybe it is an abuse of power, that we think we have this right to make horses do what we want. And obviously we do, you know, there's no law that says we can't, and it's very traditional and accepted. But if we want to evolve, I think we need to explore other ways of listening to them, listening to ourselves. And that's where horses can be very powerful guides, because they are so present and so connected with nature. They are, you know, such a part of nature. And that's what we humans have really lost in all these years of thinking we need to dominate nature. We've lost the remembrance that we are nature. So by honoring the horse, by listening to them, by respecting them, by giving them the best life possible, you know, meaning having lots of room to get their own exercise, having friends and even their family, if you can, living with them, we are then able to share with them what that sort of peace and harmony feels like. And they're so gracious at allowing us to be part of that. But it has to come from us first realizing that they have so much more to teach us.
And maybe we could talk about what, like, you have different programs for spending time with horses. What people are actually doing there, and like, yeah.
Yeah, so I coach a lot of people with horses online. And I would say the main focus of what I see that people need to learn is how to be present, how to listen to themselves, and how to get out of their own way. So there's very few exercises that we actually do with the horses, because it's all about getting to that spot in yourself where you can really hear them, where you can really see them as they are, and get past our concepts of I need to be, you know, exercising them this much a day, and I need to be putting shoes on them, and I need to be training them for this or that. Once we're through that, then it's all about your own relationship with your own horse. So the exercises we do are based on studying ourselves. You know, what are we getting upset over? What are we feeling not good enough about? What are we feeling like we need to do things differently because somebody else is telling us we need to do things differently? So even though I am suggesting things for people to work on, it's always pointing them back to themselves. You know, what do you find when you do this exercise? So once people learn how to how they work, how they operate, how they can come into presence while they're with their horse, then they can enter into whatever that horse wants to have a conversation about. Or if the horse doesn't want to have a conversation, be okay with that too. So in a way, it's kind of like, imagine you wanted to run a race, a competitive race, or a marathon, a long race. And to do that, you would need to train for it. You would need to train for it. You would need to go to the gym and show up and keep training so you can get faster. So what I do with people I'm coaching is the same thing with their minds. You can't just watch exercise videos and have a gym membership. You actually have to do the exercises. So I have exercises that people do with their minds that allows them to understand what's going on and allows them to get better and better at coming to this place where they feel really good, where they don't need the horse to do anything.
I see. And maybe you could just say some of advice that you give to people, or something that, like, how do you, maybe just some tips that people could use now after watching this, when next time we see a horse.
Next time you see a horse, I would say feel your breath, feel the breeze, hear the sounds that are around you, feel your feet on the ground. Maybe have a book with you, maybe have something that keeps your attention so that you're not wanting something from the horse. So you don't want to go up and just start touching the horse. I mean, would you imagine doing that to another person? That would be incredibly disrespectful. So think about it like that. So say you're entering the horse's pasture, or maybe you're on the other side of a fence, and you're just there. You're opening your senses. You're feeling what's going on inside you. Maybe you'll get a message from the horse. Maybe you won't. It really doesn't matter. The idea is that for you to find that place where you're feeling good, because where we get into trouble is where we believe this thought that, oh, after the horse is trained, after I can ride and do this, then I'll be happy, then everything will be great. But I went really far down that road, and it doesn't get any better. You have to find where it feels good, where it feels peaceful, where it feels harmonious each time you're with the horse. And then say you show up every day for a week, and you're not doing anything with the horse. You're just there, you're in proximity. Maybe the horse comes over, maybe they don't, but you're feeling really good. You're feeling connected to nature. And then after a week, you'll have built this week of feeling really good with horses. So you're not waiting for after you've learned how to do all this stuff to feel good. You're feeling good right away. That's the secret. Find ways to feel good right now without needing the horse to do anything. And that's where the horses can really lead us, because for the most part, they are feeling good every day. As long as they have enough food and room and friends, they find this place of peace, and they can invite us to find it too when we emulate them, when we copy them, when we do what they do. We don't have to eat the grass. Please don't eat the grass. But that idea of just being very present to, even the flies, even the sounds of the birds, the smell of the grasses, all of that is really what we've lost as humans. That simple connection to enjoying the moment.
Do you get any testimonials from people, like what have they experienced or changed in their lives after practicing this?
Oh yeah, definitely, lots. One I just heard today was a woman in Germany. She was saying that she was grateful for working with me because she found herself in the grocery store waiting for somebody to get out of the way so she could go and get an item on the shelf. And in the past, she was so impatient and upset. And because of our work together, she relaxed, she scanned, she looked through the shelves. She didn't feel like she was inconvenienced in any way. She was able to really drop into that moment and enjoy it rather than feeling like, oh, there's something that somebody's keeping me away from. So a lot of things like that. Sometimes you get like mystical messages from the animals, from the horses, but it's not about that. You know, maybe it comes, maybe it doesn't. Nobody should feel bad if they're not feeling that. It's more about just finding that peace in everyday life. And certainly the people that learn it strongly with the horses, then it transfers into their everyday life. Their human relationships get better. Their relationships with their kids get better because they're listening to and connecting with their kids on different levels. Relationships with their parents, relationships with their siblings, with their loved ones. You know, everything changes when we start on this path, because it is so much a path of finding our own peace, finding our own harmony. You know, thanks to the horses that got me here. But really it expands beyond that so quickly. And we realize that, you know, the animals are just different nations. You know, they're the different nations that have different ways of communicating. And when we can learn from them and be humble with them, then we can see that, oh, they have an amazing way of doing this. They don't get worried about something like this or that. And even when they do get worried, it passes so quickly usually, especially when they're in a free environment. Yes, a horse will get angry or upset, and then it'll be gone. You know, they really don't hold on to it, again, unless it's in more of a captivity situation where they can't, you know, move freely and express what they need to express.
I see. And what kind of, yeah, what kind of messages, what do you feel horses are telling people, and what kind, like, how does it feel like? What do they say?
I would say the most frequent messages that I feel from horses is to relax, to enjoy the moment, to be present with what's happening right now, to find that enjoyment in the moment. A lot of times, like, for example, I'll get worried that, oh, my horse is overweight or underweight, or, you know, something's wrong with my horse. I need to trim the feet more often, or my horse needs more exercise. And then I'll go out to the horse and just be with the horse, and I'll realize they're fine. They don't need that. They're okay. It's this profound acceptance of what is. So sometimes people will get messages more like, oh, that's a good example. I don't have anything coming to mind right now, but yeah, I would say mostly it's be yourself, connect.
Do you feel like sometimes people who have depression feel different when they spend time with horses, or anxiety or other mental issues?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So people that have even clinical issues like depression or anxiety definitely tend to feel better with horses if it's in this way that I'm talking about. If it's how show up for a riding lesson, I don't know that it would make that big of a difference. But if they're in an environment where the horses are respected, the horses are free to be themselves and supported in being themselves, I think it gives people a profound experience of being able to accept themselves, even if they are upset or anxious or whatever they're feeling. Like, that's okay too. The horses aren't judging us for that. They're just carrying on with what they're doing. There have been some studies done by especially the HeartMath Institute where they measure something that is the coherence between the heart rhythm and the brain waves. And they have found that actually just spending time with horses makes our heart and our mind more coherent. So they communicate better with each other within ourselves. And my guess is because the horse is so coherent. The horse has this peaceful communication between the mind and the heart, that when we are just even physically near them in this way, they they somehow transfer that to us. And it's really interesting because science is now starting to corroborate these facts that there is something healing that happens with horses. But I
Do
will
you
say, it's important to me to not force the horse to be with the human, you know? So even a lot of like equine psychotherapy, you still have the horse with a halter and you're trying to lead him around and do things, or even you're both in a round pen together. It's not the same. What I'm talking about is you go out and be with the horse wherever the horse is, and not be asking the horse to do something with you, just spending time with the horse.
So do you know any stories that you can give us example of person changing their lives after meeting horses this way, or something changing in their lives, something, a description?
Yeah. I did have a woman who was a top competitor. She had 2 top dressage horses. And in going through my course, she had this realization that neither of them were needed to be doing what they were doing. Like they both had physical issues that were causing all sorts of resistance. And she, you know, she was able to speak out for them and say, nope, we're not doing this anymore. And that was huge. You know, this was a top competitor learning to listen to her horses, and as a result, let them be free, let them say that this wasn't the life that they were looking for. There was another woman who was one of the top trainers in equine assisted psychotherapy. And she really changed the way she did things with her horses after we worked together. At the beginning, she would do exercises where people were leading the horses around and trying to get through obstacles. But after working together, it's all now about going out to the herd, being peaceful with the herd, learning from the herd, and not asking them to come in and do our human-centered exercises.
Do you see that women, like, is there a reason why so many girls and women love horses, or is it coincidence?
That's a good question. So why does it seem like the horse world is full of women and girls? I don't really have an answer for that. I think my guess would be that there's a kinship that we feel with horses, that we feel like, you know, we want to take care of them. We want to nurture them. We want to give them a good life. And unfortunately, most places where you think of, oh, give your horse a good life, it means good training and competitions and that. But I think the fact that so many of us are changing and now we're realizing, oh, it's not that. It's allowing them to have the life that they would choose. Just like if you have a kid and the kid is ready to go off to college, you want him to do what he wants to do. You know, you don't want to force him into what you think they should do. You want to learn and grow with them on their own path. So when there's this awakening, especially by women, I think that, oh, you know, their bodies are their own. They don't want to be doing, they don't want to be forced into doing something that's harmful to their bodies or their minds. And I think we women feel that too. We don't want to be subjected to things that are harmful to our bodies and our minds. So in that, there's this compassion, there's this wanting to help each other out. It's my best guess.
Can you take us through how traditional horseback riding structure is harming a horse? Because some of the viewers won't be familiar. They know how it looks like, but they don't know what is happening actually with the horse, you know? Can you take us through, like?
Yeah, most horse training happens through what's called operant conditioning, which is different ways of manipulating a being's behavior. It's how they train dolphins, it's how they train dogs, it's how they train kids sometimes. But it's a way of either giving a punishment or a reward to make the horse do what you want. And again, it's fine if that's the kind of relationship you want, but it's based on the idea that the horse isn't good enough as they are, and you need to teach them how to be. So if we can step back from that and question it and wonder, you know, is it really true that I know what's better for the horse than the horse knows? That's when we can find this other direction. But, you know, going back to operant conditioning, most of horse training these days is based on negative reinforcement. So that means negative doesn't mean bad. It just means you're taking something away. So for example, if you kick a horse and then the horse goes, then you stop kicking. So you take away the kicking when they do what you want. Or like you want the horse to turn, so you pull on the head, which is the negative reinforcement. And then when they go the way you want, then you stop pulling. And as horses get more and more trained, it can be more subtle. So it's not as obvious that you're doing something to physically move the horse, but it's still that conditioning. It's still the horse knows that if he doesn't do that, you're going to get stronger again. And that's why I say if you can do things with nothing on the horse, then great. You know, you can't really go wrong if there's no way to physically manipulate the horse. If the horse is just beside you and they're dancing and you're not touching them, no problem.
What about like the belts, the saddle, like putting all that stuff on horse?
Yeah, so the saddle and the girth, it's a double-edged sword. I did a lot of research about how the saddle particularly and the weight of a rider affects a horse. And the scientific evidence proves that the first damage that happens is that the circulation in the horse's back is compromised. So just like if you're wearing something, you know, say you have a backpack or something and it's pressing down on your shoulders, you know, you can wear it for a certain amount of time, but then, you know, you want to shift it around and it doesn't feel comfortable. Whereas with a saddle, it's strapped there. You know, the horse can't shift it around, and usually it's very, very tight because you don't want it to move around. So yes, it's good in that it distributes the pressure. It makes it more even than if you were just sitting with your seat bones. But just even without a rider, the pressure of that saddle and the girth on the back tissues are compromising the circulation. It's making the back go numb. It's making, a lot of times you'll see white spots on the horse's back where the saddle goes. And that means that there was so much pressure there that it actually killed the pigmentation cells that cause the color in the hair, and then the hair grows in white. So there's so much pressure. And there's, in my book, The Path of the Horse, which is different than the movie, I go into all the different pressures that they studied when they put pressure sensing pads under there. So, you know, it probably wouldn't be very uncomfortable if it were just on for a few minutes, but people who ride horses know that the saddle is on for more than a few minutes. And so that's where it really is causing discomfort and probably pain. And that's when the horses start to react. They're like, oh, I don't want to do this. And we just think they're being naughty and we have to push them through it and make them behave. But they're not. They're just saying, hey, I don't want to do this. This hurts. This is uncomfortable. And then we shut them up by, you know, putting a noseband on or putting on a stronger bit, or, you know, making them go around and around until they're exhausted. And it's just, now that I can clearly see how that works, it's not anything I would want to visit again.
Mm-hmm. And how about the way horses are kept in traditional riding schools or environments?
Yeah. Horses are kept in usually small areas like a pen, or like a stall, or an individual turnout pen. And people think, well, I want to protect my horse. I don't want him to get injured. But it really damages them socially. and emotionally. So I understand why they do it. It's more convenient. Yeah, nobody's going to kick your horse if he's standing alone in a stall. But the amount of mental trauma, I would say, it does to a horse being kept like that is, well, if your end goal is to have what they call a bomb-proof riding horse, it might be the best place, because the horse will give up easier. It's like, wow, I'm excited I get to go out and be ridden, because otherwise I would just be standing in this boring little pen. So that's where people think, oh, my horse loves being ridden. He loves to get out and do all this, because what's his choice? Whereas if you had a horse that was just free out in a large field, you know, hectares big, they wouldn't most likely be coming up and saying, yes, please take me on a ride. They would be saying, no, I'm busy. I'm eating grass with my family here. So it's developed because it works. You know, it keeps a horse in a state of mental captivity and physical captivity, where they're totally dependent on you for their exercise, for their being able to get out and be social. And that's also the conditions that create the horse shutting down those levels of communication that I was talking about earlier. You know, I don't know how much some of us were locked up during coronavirus, but for those of us who had to stay in a little apartment for weeks and weeks at a time, I think that would be similar, you know, other than we do have a choice. We hopefully chose for the good of all to stay in. But the horses don't have a choice. They can't open the gate and leave when they want. So imagine this, you know, this animal that's supposed to be living free on a prairie is now confined with bars. It's just.
Yeah, I understand. And also there's a metal thing in the mouth. What is that, and how does it affect horse?
Yeah, so the bit is the metal. Sometimes it's made of plastic or rubber, but usually it's metal. And it's basically designed to hurt a horse. And people will argue and they'll say, oh no, bits don't, you know, a bit doesn't hurt a horse unless you're really pulling hardly on it. But it's not true. I mean, if it didn't hurt a horse, it wouldn't work. And it's basically the next level of pain after the halter, which would go around their nose, or a bitless bridle. So that's still controlling a horse through pain. You know, it's the pain on the outside. But once you get into the mouth here, it's like our gums. You know, it's very sensitive. There's no muscle in there. The bit is resting on the tongue and the bars of the mouth, which are just bone covered with a thin network of nerves. It can be so powerful. I've had this happen where, you know, a horse wanted to take off and I pulled back on the reins to stop the horse, and it was so painful that the horse just crumpled to the ground. You can break the horse's jaw with a bit. But again, people use it because it works. And even a bit that is just sitting in the horse's mouth without being pulled on, it still takes up space. There's no, you know, people think, oh, there's space in the horse's mouth and it doesn't harm them if you're not using it. But if you really could see inside of a horse's mouth, that space is taken up by the tongue. There's no extra space in there. Yes, they'll open their mouth and there'll be extra space to try and avoid the bit, but a horse with their mouth closed like you want it to be, the bit is always putting pressure on there.
I see.
So again, people use it because it works, but it also shuts down so much communication from the horse because they're just trying to do whatever they have to do to avoid the pain.
So now when you see horses kept in traditional environments, do you see pain in them that you never saw before?
Oh yeah, because I'm really focused on developing sanctuary, because I think people need to meet horses that aren't under this sort of pain or trauma. because otherwise you don't really know, because horses are a prey animal. So when they are in trouble, they tend to like go within. They get quiet. They don't scream out. They get quiet. They you know, like an animal that's just been caught and it's about to get killed. It gets very small and quiet. So horses too, they get very introverted, and they, most of them, not all of them, the pony that I had didn't, but most horses, instead of speaking out or rebelling against the pain or the trauma, they'll just almost fade away, you know, like not be interested in interacting and engaging. You know, maybe they'll put their ears back a little bit or walk away if they can. But it's, yeah, I see a lot of trauma in horses that are traditionally kept.
So you mentioned before that people almost experience awakening, the riders who suddenly discover that all their lives they were working with animals and not understanding what is happening.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of things they say when they feel the awakening?
Well, usually the awakening that they experience typically starts from having a horse and having that horse say in some way that they don't want to be doing what they're doing. So it might look like the horse bucks, or the horse runs off, or the horse, you know, is fighting and throwing his head and opening his mouth and resisting in whatever way they're resisting. And then the trainer says, oh, you know, kick him harder, or pull that, or use this harder bit. And like me, the owner starts thinking, no, I want harmony, I want peace. So then they start looking for a different training system, and a different training system, and a different training system, until they come to this place where they recognize that the training itself is the problem. The fact that we think that we need to make them into something that is better than they are is the problem. And that's where it comes full circle back to ourselves. Who are we to ask these horses to be something different than they are, when what they have, the gifts that they have, is so much more what we humans need. We don't need more trained horses. We need more peace. We need more compassionate communication. We need more enjoyment of each other as we are, versus, you know, oh, I need to be strong and I need to be the warrior and win this battle with the horse.
And do you have this issue in California that people are getting horses for their kids, ponies, without even without knowledge and responsibility? And in Lefane, it's very cruel. Like, if they have a lawn and water, they just, oh, I will get a horse for my kids or something like that. And that leads to terrible outcomes often. What's the situation in the United States and California?
Yeah, I would say it's the same, you know. So the kid wants a horse, I want a horse, I want a horse. And if the parents can make that happen, of course, they'll make it happen. But you know, we're going on what we see in the movies and what we see from the top trainers. It all looks so beautiful. It looks so amazing. Even on TikTok or YouTube or Instagram, you see all these beautiful pictures of horses and people. So it's really this illusion. And I you know, I'm doing my best to say that there's another alternative, but I think a lot of times it really takes a person getting their first horse, and not even like a lesson horse. Like, a lot of people, they'll start by just having lessons with somebody else's horse. And the awakening usually doesn't come with that. It comes when you get your own horse, and suddenly all the decisions are up to you. You know, what training system you use, where the horse is kept, what the horse eats. And once you realize that you love this horse, you want the best for this horse, and what you're doing may not be good for the horse. That's, I think, when people have the opportunity to see that there is something different. And hopefully that's when they watch The Path of the Horse and see that even something as widespread as the use of a bit is part of the harm that's happening. So yeah, in California here, of course, people are getting their children horses every day and getting themselves. There's a lot of older women who couldn't have horses as children. So they're in their 40s, they're in their 50s, they're in their 60s, and they're getting their first own horse. And that's a lot of the people I work with, because then all of a sudden it's like, wow, I didn't realize training was so harsh, and I don't want to do that. I don't want that kind of relationship, which is great, because that's when I can show them that, oh, there's something that's so much better that will make you feel free, make the horse feel free, and, help you find what you are really looking for in getting a horse, which was that good feeling, that feeling of being good, knowing that I'm taking care of you, knowing that I'm doing my best for you. So it is possible, but a lot of times it takes people feeling that the other way isn't right first.
I hope I will visit your sanctuary.
Yeah, give me a year or two and we should have a really nice one set up here.
That's nice. And how, you were filming yourself, the documentary?
I did a lot of the filming myself. I did hire one person who had more experience, and that was invaluable. But I was always filming right alongside him, and I ended up using a lot of my own shots because I knew what I wanted. And yeah.
Amazing. Are you planning to film more? Do you?
Yes. Right now, what I'm really focused on is creating these sanctuaries. We're working on a business plan to create one here in California near where I live, and also one in the UK. So I'm putting together a lot of my archival footage to make sanctuary videos now to get the word out about what we're doing.
Amazing. In the UK. Wow. I live in London. So
it'll probably be somewhere you can visit a lot easier than California.
That's lovely. What's your professional title? Do you use the words horse whisperer, or is it something from Hollywood?
Yeah, that's a good question. I hate the term horse whisperer because it's so misused. People say, oh, he's a horse whisperer, but it's just a horse trainer. And I'm not that. So even though the word itself is nice, I don't like associating with it, because then people think I'm another horse trainer. What am I though?
Horse advocate.
Yes, I love that. Horse advocate. I'll live with that one for sure.
Lovely.
Sometimes horse guardian, but I like horse advocate.